Mm. Hey y'all, welcome to the Devon A. Morris Unfiltered Call-In Show. Let's get ready. You have any questions? Come on, call in. Come on to that Discord channel. Do me a favor, get the unfiltered crew some finger snaps. We're ready to get started here. Mondays, 8 p.m. Every single Monday, we're here. I'm excited about it. Are you? Let's get this show started, y'all. The greatest Scrum show on earth. I'll see y'all soon. Enjoy.
Hey, I love that old school intro, man. That old school intro makes me feel good. I got a classic topic today. We're going to talk about remote not being a problem. Basically, remote and hybrid Scrum that delivers, right? So dealing with resilience and learning teams, we'll talk about this, right? But it's going to be a classic agile topic, is the point I'm making to you. So come on in, get comfortable. As you know, this is the Unfiltered Show. My name is Devon Morris. I'm your guide on this journey for the day, right? Um, we got that lined up. If you've never been around the show before, then you may need to know that about 5 minutes after we jump into the actual topic, and we hopefully leave room, hopefully about 30 minutes, 20 to 30, well, maybe more than that, sometime about 20 minutes after. So we go for about 15 minutes. So about 20 minutes after, or even longer than that, depending on the topic, we open the floor so people to ask questions, by typing them in, putting them in the comments, or by coming on the actual show itself. So hopefully you're digging in, you're getting comfortable. We're gonna make this one lightweight because hey, let me tell y'all something. I got a dissertation I'm working on. Just so you know, right? Just so you know, I got a dissertation I'm working on, and I'm busy with that. But I told myself I'll jump on, right? I'll jump on. I'm probably gonna jump on next week as well because I kind of miss y'all to some degree, right? I really, really do, right? Even though this all takes some work, I do miss y'all to some degree. So, what's going on? What's happening? Do me a favor in the comments, say what's up, say hi. So I know you're out there. We'll definitely get some of our usual folks coming on around. So come on in and say hi. Um, what's going on with me? Actually, I'm working on Atypical, y'all. Working on building out the website. One of the things that I want to make sure that you know, if you got a CSM from me, somewhere in the past, I got a couple good things out there for you that's coming. Hopefully, by the beginning of September. And since I'm going to give it to new CSMs, I'm going to give these things to CSMs that's been around for decades with me. So I want to make sure you know that's coming. I'll start announcing those things next week. So expect those things, and it's going to be a part of actually us putting everything together for Atypical. Atypical being that spin on atypical, where we talk about team effectiveness, leadership development, all those kind of great things. Sprinkle some Scrum and Agile into that, like I always will. I can't help that. But that's where we're going, and you'll see some of that next week. I'll start introducing those things to you, especially these bonuses that I'm giving in the CSM now, that I'm just going to really give to alumni. I mean, if you're alumni, you're going to get these bonuses. But like I created 800 practice exam questions, which is ridiculous. But I did create 800 practice exam questions. Now, that being said, in terms of doing that and making that available to people, you CSMs, it's already the CSM, you don't need it because you're not taking the test. But new people will. But I do got something about dominating your Scrum career, right? Helping you land that first or next role, right? That's coming September, right? And I'm gonna give it to all my alumni, right? So just know that not all my alumni, but the CSM folks, well, CSPO folks too. Really, all my alumni. Really is what it boils down to. So that'll be a good thing. Other than that. Just waiting for feedback from my whole IRB process. I got the feedback actually today. It's been 2 weeks, so I got to go ahead and respond to that. So I can keep this dissertation thing rolling, 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 rolling. Is what I'm really trying to do. So just working through all the little nuances of what needs to be done. So it's just been, a good time. Hopefully, you all are having a good start to your week. I had somebody that was asking me questions about this topic, so. I told myself, let me talk about it so the video is there so then people can be good to go in terms of with information. So, first thing I'm going to say, I'm going to go ahead and just begin with the topic. And I'm going to start by just saying, welcome, welcome, welcome. Here we kind of strip away all the fluff, right? And get real about what it takes to actually lead effective, resilient, agile teams in the world today. So here's what I'll ask you, right? Because this is something that has been interesting for me, right? How many of you have said one of these things in the past year? And drop it in the comments if you can, or just imagine it for yourself, right? We used to collaborate better in person, right? I know that's something that I have said time and time again. I still believe face to face is the is the best way of actually communicating. But I definitely have felt that, right? Another thing that I've seen. I definitely had a time or two where this was a problem, so I had to improve it. Our retros feel dry over Zoom. They don't feel engaging over Zoom. What about this? I'm not sure my team still feels connected, still feels safe, right? Some people actually have, little devices on their machines that record their keystrokes and everything else like that, right? If you have felt this way at all, at all, at all, at all, at all, you are not alone. I think there's a lot of people out here feeling the same exact way, right? And there has been the shift to hybrid and remote work. Didn't just change where we work at, right? It really disrupted how we build trust, how we actually learn, how we actually deliver as teams. And here's the truth: really high performing, adaptive, psychologically safe teams are really still very possible, even across the time zones and that screen fatigue that we classically get. So tonight we're going to talk about some Scrum practices for remote and hybrid teams that for a lot of us, we may feel like we're breaking rules to some degree, but finding ways to deliver results without uh, making people burn out, really, right? So we're going to talk about that today. The first thing really on my head is really the challenge of hybrid itself, right? Um, See, let's get this open here, right? Because when you go into a hybrid situation, you remember those like hallway conversations that would be had? Those are kind of gone, right? I still use sticky notes, right? But I feel less and less a need for them, except for me personally, because a lot of devices replicate those things, right? So it's kind of killed that, right? What about that? Hey, you got a minute that leads to some real insight in that collaboration with a colleague or an individual. Those things are hard to come by, right? But what it didn't kill is the need for alignment. It didn't kill the need for rhythm. And then there's also the need for a team to be really resilient under pressure. See, the thing about it is that, and I'm seeing this in the research that I'm doing at this point in time, it's showing that psychological safety decreases in remote teams unless you really, really, really intentionally build new ways of working that help to maintain it, right? Call it rituals, call it ceremonies, call it whatever you want to. You have to build new things around the way that you work so you can actually establish these things, right? This means that you really need new tools, new rhythms, new agreements. So you need to change things for the environment that we currently exist in. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about three, I guess, things that I've seen, battle tested tactics that teams are using right now to create connection, clarity, speed, without ever walking into the same room. Without ever walking into the same room. Um, let's start off in the big place, right? In that big place, the first practice is going to be asynchronous stand-ups. You know, those daily scrums, right? Um, I always laugh because in class there's the classic battle, should the scrum master be there, right? Um, and they're not required, it's for the developers, right? But when you think about that daily stand-up, it's really the crown jewel of Scrum, right? If there's one thing people don't classically skip, it's the daily scrum, right? It's the daily stand up, right? But here's the thing: when managing across 5 different time zones, a daily scrum at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning is really no longer feasible. It's really, really hard to do without torturing somebody on some end of something. So you got to think a little bit different here, right? And so then the question becomes, what are high performing remote teams doing? Well, a lot of them truly are running asynchronous stand-ups. Now, that right there is as unagile, as unscrum as I would ever think about things being. Am I used to that kind of stuff? Not really, y'all. It's something that I see now. I get the logic. I agree with it actually, in practice. And I've seen it be very effective, especially when having those multiple time zones. I remember actually doing this in a company a long time ago because we had 7 different time zones and wasn't nothing we could do about it, right? And so when you synchronize around the goal. Whether that you're synchronizing around the 3 basic questions about yesterday, today, and what's blocking you in reference to the goal, but the idea is that we're synchronizing, the developers are synchronizing around the goal. Um, but guess what? It don't have to be live. It could actually be you communicating across some channel like Slack, Teams, Jira, Confluence, whatever that channel is, just to make sure people understand where you are at and kind of where they need to go, right? It really works because no one's stuck waiting for the actual meeting, or I got to be up really late to be a part of this meeting, or I'm working. They don't have to sacrifice themselves in that kind of way, right? So they're not waiting for the meeting, right? It does create the visibility that we actually want. M- and some of the exchange is not a live exchange, but it creates some of that visibility, right? That everyone can read it, everybody can respond to it, right? It builds ownership without micromanaging people, right? So you can do that without micromanaging people, and especially if you focus it on a team. Now, if you go in and start trying to ask people questions and belittle them because of something that happened, then that's going to be real micromanagement. So you don't want to do that. So here's the tips that I would give you in terms of that, right? I would say to you first and foremost, just make sure that if you're going to do that, keep the thread, keep that communication, keep that particular channel as clean as possible in terms of focusing on those updates, and that's what's there. If you don't do that, it's going to be much harder to keep that being useful for the team. Make sure that you kind of react, right? In that situation, like react with emojis to acknowledge people and what they're saying, right? Um, they want to feel like they've heard, not just seen. They want to feel heard, right? And a simple thumbs up, a simple smiley face, those kind of things will actually help out, right? And if need be, right, add some type of blocker tag, some type of impediment tag, right? So the team knows who needs help first, right? So the team knows, hey, I need help getting something addressed, right? Those things tend to stand out like it's a flashing light. So if you do something like that, it's going to be helpful, right? See, asynchronous communication doesn't mean that people are disconnected. It just requires some discipline. This is something I'll be thinking about dealing with in my working agreements. And the best teams that leverage this, the best ones, right? end up finding that rhythm that works for them. And that can exist across many, many time zones. Matter of fact, I'd go as far as saying across many, many continents, right? So I'll ask you all that's here. Um, have you been a part of an asynchronous daily scrum, right? Asynchronous stand up. If you have, let me know what you thought about it. Drop that in the comments for me, right? Let me know, was it good? Was it horrible? Is it something that you just do regularly? I don't know. Just let us know. Let's continue with the next thing. Man, oh man, oh man, I forgot to give me some water. I may have to take me a little break. Give me some water, people. We'll see. So let me hold on just a second. See, I had to holler and scream for somebody to bring me some water because I can feel it getting parched right now. All right, so let's talk real quick, right? Next thing. Um, split retrospectives, right? Um, okay, now this is almost being blasphemous to me, right? Because retrospectives are really where resilience is truly built, right? Um, when in person retro spark, they really spark deep reflection and bold suggestions is what they really truly do. But in hybrid, you get cameras off, you get a shared document, five people saying we're good. Just all those things are absolutely horrible in terms of it. Thank you. It's horrible in terms of it. I got my water, so this is good, right? Let me take a quick sip, y'all. That was great. So, that being said, when it comes to working in split retrospectives, you really have to understand a little bit about how it works, right? Because I'm very much used to everybody being in the same room and kind of having those conversations, right? Done it online, same time, having those conversations. But when you think about it, right, you can actually first and foremost run it async. You can run it asynchronously, right? Or through some digital collection, right? Post feedback anonymously via Mural. I would hate to say Google had a thing, but it's gone now. I would not use a Google form. And then what you can do is you can split into smaller synchronous groups, right? Remote with remote, in person with in person, or people in a similar time zone, or within several time zones that can overlap really easy, where people process that feedback in real time, right? So that means now you got, let's just say you got a party that is over in Asia and a party that's in the United States. Now you can get the information, synchronize around that information in the smaller groups, and bring that back to the group. I think that that's an amazing way to do things because it allows you to get at the core of what you're trying to get at. And it also allows everybody to get feedback because you don't have to have everybody together to come up with even the action items, right? And agree on what we should work on next, right? You could put a poll out there, something to get people to agree on that, right? Why it works. One of the things that's true is in that digital world, there's a little less risk, right? People can absolutely speak more freely. Smaller groups build more safety. So you're getting the advantage of both, right? You still have to be in alignment though. You're not forcing people. So then they can lose that psychological safety. See, retros aren't about rehashing and talking about the same thing over and over again. They're about recovering, they're about recalibrating. And if you split your retros, it may give the hybrid team some space, some time back, right? Because you want to give them as much time as possible to deliver whatever it is that they're trying to deliver. That's what you truly want to do. So I think that split retrospective might be very useful for you. All right, so another thing that I think is also very important that I think is helpful, really, really helpful when it comes to knowledge sharing. I have found that when I work with people uh, overseas, I have to do something that's really, really important. And this could surprise you, but I'm referring to like virtual pairing, right? Whether it is your coding, your designing, your writing, your planning, right? High trust teams kind of pair up, right? Two people working on one thing, shared screen, shared thoughts there. To me, it just reminds me of sharing my screen in terms of, Zoom or Meets or something like that. What it does is it does something really important. It works because there's a co-creation element that's happening during that, right? When I'm in a working session with someone, with just another individual, and we are actually working on that same thing and they're sharing it to me in Zoom, I feel like I'm a part of the creation of whatever that is. So I think that that would actually be helpful. The thing is that a lot of us do this all the time. You think about that quick meeting you set up with the peer and you're remote and y'all talking through and working through a particular document, right? That's helpful. You can do that on way more stuff, right? The biggest thing I find is it spreads knowledge. It helps to fight those silos. It leads to faster onboarding. Faster decisions is what you're going to get. Also, it's going to help reduce burnout, right? People don't feel like they're in it by themselves. They're working all alone, right? You don't want to do that, right? Let's see. So to make this thing work, I want you to, if you're being specific about it, especially for a team, I would say schedule, a 90-minute parent block, right? Where two people kind of get together and pair 60 minutes, right? Whatever it's going to be, and work through something, right? Make sure that you rotate, pairs, right? You don't want all the senior people with the senior people and the junior people with the junior people, right? Because that can cause problems, right? Um, you want to make sure you keep a log, right? Takeaways from each session. That way you can make improvements to these things over time. This is beyond being a productivity hack. It really is about building that psychological safety, right? It just reminds us that we're not in this thing all by ourselves. We're not in this thing alone. So these are things that I've seen working. I've done some of them in terms of my journeys here. And so it's been one of those things that's been really, really fun to see. I can't say that when I look at people today, most people want to work 5 days a week from home at this point. We've gotten so used to it. Most people are just not interested in going to the office whatsoever. So I believe that when you think about these practices, hopefully you may have used some of them, right? An async stand up, split retrospectives. You can async the retrospectives too. Virtual pairing. I think these are the things that are going to be helpful as we move forward in the future. And one of the things that I got to say here it is really, really interesting, right? A lot of us are going to have AI teammates in the future. You ultimately will be pairing with them. You understand? You will be pairing with them, right? When I use AI today, I feel like we are having a good conversation, man, for real. I really do, right? I really feel like it's ridiculous to some level, right? So it's just a good thing, right? Just a good thing, virtual pairing there, right? Even though I had the biggest problem trying to get the people to parent real life like that, management be like, man, no, that's two people on one computer. No, man, that's stupid. That's what I hear all the time, right? So here's some things to talk about as we close out, and we'll open up the questions, see if we got open up the floor for questions, see if we got any questions. Hybrid isn't going away, y'all. We pandemic just made it hyper show up, right? But we were already doing hybrid before, right? So nothing really is surprising about that, especially for anybody who's been involved in IT, right? What you got to be careful about is that silence, that disconnection, that drift, right? Because you don't know what comes with that, right? Async stand-ups could actually create higher levels of visibility while reducing burnout. Split retrospectives protect reflection and the voice of every individual. right? Virtual pairing brings back knowledge sharing, creativity, and collaboration. All really, really important things. So, really, most of all, when we really think about this, these practices don't just protect performance, they actually protect people, is what you got to understand, right? And when you protect people, people are the heartbeat of every effective, resilient learning team, right? If you want, this is something for you to think about. This is something for you to determine how to really, really kind of deal with it, jump into it, especially when you actually have teams. So, on that note, I think I'm going to wrap it up on that one. I think we've gone through more than enough in terms of that topic. I will ask and see if any of you all have any questions that you'd like to talk about. Drop them in the comments. I like this topic. I told myself I wanted to get back to a tad bit of Scrum, right? A tad bit of Agile. I've been talking about a little bit of everything at this point. So I want to make sure that we pull these topics in here and there to make sure we're good to go. And I keep sharpening the blade, as I would say, right? So nothing but goodness in terms of that. So yeah, I'm just having fun with this one. We're gonna make sure we jump back out here next week. I'm gonna give people more time, and then we're just gonna have a good time. But I see Fabian showed up. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You may still be here, you may be gone, but thank you for coming. Any questions from anyone, or is this gonna be one of those short nights? Which is fine, right? 'Cause a lot of us are busy doing things, right? And I may need to make it a short night anyway, so I can go do my work. Dissertation work, right? Is the point. It's crazy, right? So any questions from anyone in my LinkedIn crowd, in my YouTube crowd? Nothing crazy here. All right. Looks like we're gonna make it that. We're gonna keep it short and sweet today, right? I'm glad I jumped on, but next week I think we're gonna have a pretty good topic and some things to tell you about. So on that note, I'm gonna say it's been a good one, y'all. I got to go back and work on that dissertation. So I'm gonna say good night, have an amazing week, and I will see you soon. All right. Bye bye, everybody.